Hello, and welcome to the BullCast podcast. I'm Katie Pickler, and with me is Court Winsett.
Hello, Katie.
And Cameron Spann.
Hello.
What are we talking about today?
Personalities.
Personality disorder?
Not personality disorders, but just like with everything else, there are different types of spenders, of money people, right?
Okay, so we're not talking about my mood in the mornings versus my mood in the afternoon.
No.
Okay, so we're talking about money personalities.
Money personalities. And
Got
so, one of my wife's favorite memes is there are two different kinds of people who spend tons of money and people who like to save it. Unfortunately, they marry each other.
That's true.
There are actually more than two different types of people. So we're just going to kind of run through them. And this is sort of a fun episode. We're not going to get too deep.
Yeah, and this plays into all the memes that are out there like, no, I'm not rich. I'm just financially irresponsible and like things like that.
Mm-hmm. When I hear money personalities, I think of like the different amounts of like dollars. Like a $1 bill has like the everyman personality. Mm-hmm. Like a $100 bill is a little more...
Dang.
Bougie, dapper. I don't know that I've ever thought about that. The personalities that go with each of the currency.
Don't get me started on the penny.
It's pretty cool. Okay, so the 5 main money personalities. I'll take the first one.
You take the first one. It seems appropriate.
Hey, big spender.
Actually, number 3 might be more
Well, I'll
appropriate for
take
you.
that one too. Big spender loves nice cars, new gadgets, brand name clothing. So this is the person who always has the latest and greatest, the new iPhone, the new whatever it is, desires to have the latest, greatest, most beautiful home. They are the Joneses. We've talked about the Joneses in so many different episodes, but these are the Joneses. And I do think back to that David Duchovny movie that he is with a marketing company and he is in that position, planted into this house to have all the latest and greatest, to really be a marketing, branding, like big spender, but it's not really theirs. It's just these companies are sending it to him to then try and influence the neighbors to all have the latest and greatest. So comfortable spending money, do not fear debt, and often take risk when investing. So, because again, they have that, like the song, Hey Big Spender. It is a very boisterous song. It's like you are confident in what you do and you are not scared to flash the new greatest things you've got.
Yeah, this first category is like what I aspire to be, but I'm too gun shy to actually be the big spender, but I like the new gadgets and the brand names and the nice cars.
I think there's elements of how you can be a big spender in certain things. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I'm going to be the big spender when it comes to the new iPhone or the new whatever, but I may not be the big spender on the new car, the new iPhone, the new watch, the new clothes, the new shoes, everything.
There are definitely people that will spend a lot of money when they travel, right? They will absolutely
live it up
when they're on vacation, but then they drive around in a car that's got 250,000 miles on it or something like that. I don't want to get too granular, but you do have within each of these categories, you're going to have different types of big spenders. The big spender that spends all of their money on a house, the big spender that spends all of their money on a car. But I think that what really makes this category specific is the big spender who can spend on anything, right?
Yeah.
They're not limited by means. They can spend money on whatever they want, and it doesn't matter. It's not gonna. They don't have to go, ooh, do I have the money for this? They have the money for it. It's just whether or not they want a thing, right?
This is the bougie.
This is the Kim Kardashian. I'm kind of tying her to this.
This is where you can be bougie and you don't feel guilty about being bougie or don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We'll have to, at some point, not necessarily on this episode, but we'll have to talk about the fact that a lot of the people that I know that are truly wealthy are actually very
frugal.
Yeah. Just because you're a big spender doesn't mean that you're necessarily the wealthiest person in the room. It could be a whole different thing.
Because that movie really shows, and we're going on a rabbit hole here, but the movie really shows that this family is like branding all this great stuff, showing it, and then you see that other neighbors are trying to keep up with them and they're keeping up with the appearance, but they're actually putting themselves into debt.
Yeah.
So then there's like imposter syndrome with trying to be a big spender when you really can't afford it. But again, there's so many ins and outs of this. This is just talking about the specific 5 main money personalities,
right,
and how you aren't branded that personality for the rest of your life. You could have different moments where you're exuding that personality.
Yeah. So the first of 5 main personalities is big spender that Katie just did.
Yep.
Right.
Court, what's number 2?
Number 2 is savers, obviously. The opposite of big spender. They are going to go and shop only when it's necessary. They're rarely going to make purchases with a credit card on credit. Obviously, we don't advise on buying anything on credit if you can't pay it off at the end of the month. But generally, they're going to be debt-free, and they are probably going to be considered frugal. So maybe these are the real rich people in the room. I don't know, based on our last...
Penny pinchers is a code.
And then they're conservative. They don't take risks with their investments. This is basically the ultra-conservative person. This is the person who pinches all of the pennies, is not interested in going into debt, does not want to buy a whole lot of stuff just to buy it, just to own it, just to have it. They may live a nice lifestyle, but only if they can live that nice lifestyle within their means, within whatever income they have on a monthly basis or whatever.
And there's positive and negatives to both the big spender and the saver, because sometimes I'll have saver clients and I'm having to coach them through. It's okay to spend. Yeah. It's okay.
Your muffler is falling off. Please buy a car.
It's okay to do this. It's okay to, spend a little bit of money and do these things versus like the big spenders. It's like, hey, you might want to think about what could happen if you lost your job or if you don't have that inheritance coming to you or different things like that. So,
exactly.
Okay, what's the third?
Okay, so we've done big spenders, savers, and now we are at shoppers. And I wonder how similar this is to big spenders. So the shoppers often develop great emotional satisfaction from spending money. I'm thinking retail therapy, that probably fits in here.
Yeah.
They look for bargains and are happy when they find them. They may be aware of their urge, so they're self-aware, and concerned about the debt it creates. So they're not completely clueless. They know that being a shopaholic means you're spending a lot of money and maybe going into debt, but it feels good.
Yeah.
And they're varied in terms of investing.
Yeah, so this is probably a lot of the average that enjoy shopping, things like that. And it's just that that you maybe spend too much, but it's trying to have it in balance. But that goes down to the whole behavioral finance stuff we've talked about. And why do you spend? Why do you do different things? Retail therapy, you talked about that. But that sometimes is someone's in a bad mood, in a bad place, or wants to treat themselves. Whatever it is that they've created this dynamic, that is why they end up being a shopper. And it could just be that they enjoy, like, we've talked about many times, calling me out on I enjoy buying stuff for people, whether it's getting them a coffee when I get one, or it's buying them, tickets to a show or buying them a present. Like, I just enjoy that. And so that is something that I know I'm a shopper. And I do think sometimes like, oh, wait, I just spent all that money on other people. Like, now I got to worry about like the money I need to spend on me because my muffler just fell off, according to court.
Well, and it's interesting because I am a shopper, but I'm not a buyer. Okay. So like, I like to go to stores.
You're a window shopper.
Yeah. I like to go and look around and go like, oh, gee, I wish I could buy that. But I don't actually buy a whole lot. And I think you're really, when you talk about you're being a shopper or not being a shopper versus you're being a gift giver versus not being a gift giver, I don't think that they're necessarily exactly the same thing, but I think they are related because like you like to give gifts, it doesn't even occur to me because I'm like, I'm not going to spend that money on myself. I'm not going to spend that money on you, Cameron. Sorry. I'm not going to buy you that thing. It doesn't occur to me, but I don't think that they're necessarily mutually exclusive. Like I know people who are gifters who are not necessarily shoppers.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think gifter is one of the categories, but I think it's definitely a subcategory of something, right?
Yeah.
Gotta be.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about big spenders, savers, and shoppers. Now we're into debtors.
This just keeps getting more bleak.
I know.
Oh, it's getting dark.
Aren't trying to make a statement with their expenditures, commonly don't spend much time thinking about their money or tracking where they spend it, generally spend more than they earn and are deeply in debt. So debtors, it could be that you were a big spender and your situation changed. It could be that you were a shopper and couldn't get control of it, and then you turned into a debtor. But they're specifically talking about that they spend more than they earn and are deeply in debt and don't spend much time thinking about their money or tracking where they spend it.
Key. I think that's the key is when we're talking about debtors, we're talking about people who they're not necessarily trying to keep up with the Joneses. They're not necessarily doing anything. They're just not paying attention to their finances at all. and they end up.
And it's sneaky. It's the number of times I talk to people, like that credit card bill will sneak up on you. It'll all start snowballing. And I've commonly used myself as an example that it's one of those that you have I'm going to have a treat myself day and I'm going to book this great trip for my friends. And then all of a sudden my water heater is going to break and I'm going to get a pay cut at work or something.
Yeah.
And it all is going to hit at one time. And then long term, you're going to be okay because you're able to, budget and figure it out. But you're going to be hurting for a little while as you try and spread out that mass expense you've just put on yourself because of a couple of different things that you weren't planning for.
Yeah, and also it's worth noting that long term, you may not necessarily be okay if you end up getting into so much debt that you can't
get out from underneath it.
You can't get out from underneath it. And then you become a debtor with a big D. A bankruptcy debtor.
A little D or a big D.
If you end up having to file bankruptcy to get rid of those debts, then that's a whole different. But that happens. It happens. You could be living on the cusp or living just slightly in debt, but able to manage it and able to just sort of make everything jump to the next month. And then one big expense hits you and it ruins everything.
And that's all
You've
of this.
Got no backup.
Yeah, all of this goes to your behavior with money and things like that because it's very easy. We've seen these situations of movies or TV shows like Schitt's Creek where they're big spenders. They're living the life. They have all this lavish opportunity. They don't have to think about money. And now it's like, how much does it cost to do that? Like, where's my Evian? Where's my,
Ooh, David.
Where's all my lavish stuff? And then it turns into you are a debtor and you're really struggling now. But there's also debtors that are very well aware of the situation they're in. And they almost go closer to the savers because there's some people that are so focused on, well, I have student loan debt. I have a house note. I have this, that I have to coach them a lot of times of there's a difference between good debt and bad debt. And there's a difference of being aware of your debt, not ignoring it, paying towards it, but also living your life because there's a lot that goes into that. But what's our last personality?
The very last personality of the 5 that we are giving today, these are very broad personalities, is the investor. So you're consciously aware of money. You understand your financial situation. You're trying to put your money to work. You're trying to do your best. You're looking for ways that you could potentially make the money that you have earn you additional income and actually not necessarily support you. Those are like the big-eyed investors that are like, I want to do nothing but have passive income. We've talked about passive income before, the idea that you can live off nothing but the money that you have.
This is the person that sees that dollar bill and says, I think I can stretch that out.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're basically going to be careful. You're not necessarily completely 100% risk averse. Your tolerance for the possibility that you might lose some, but you might also gain some, you're willing to balance that. You're willing to say, okay, there is some risk to this. I might lose, but I could potentially also gain. And the possibility for gain balances out the risk that I might lose. So, you just basically have a good general understanding of the money. Your awareness of debt is good. You have a good, healthy relationship with debt. You're not necessarily completely debt averse, but you're also not completely overloaded with debt. You've got good savings. You've got a good understanding of your different quote unquote levels of liquidity, right? You've got some money to spend. This would kind of be where I would like to get people. This category is kind of the spot that I would like to have people is you're not entirely focused on all of the appearances. You're also not completely overburdened with debt, but you're not worried about taking on some debt if it's useful. You do have some savings, but you're not completely focused on savings. It's kind of a full understanding of money and your monetary situation.
Yeah, that's the key is understanding your financial situation and knowing what can work and what can't work for you. Because I can see within a relationship, I can see within one person, you can touch on all 5 of these different personalities at different times, and that you're going to put different values, because we've talked about that, of the value that you put behind something. That I may look at how much money Cam spent on disc and be like, it's kind of crazy. Why are you doing that? But that's his passion. So he's spending money on something that is exercise, that it's his passion, that it's something he enjoys. And he may look at me and be like, why are you spending so much money on shoes or, to upgrade your plane ticket or things like that?
One pair of discs cost way less than one pair of shoes.
Oh, I guarantee it.
But it's just perspective that you could be like big spenders or savers or shoppers or debtors or investors at any moment. And it's just kind of knowing the different personalities. And it's kind of like the different love languages and stuff you have.
Yeah, what I'm about to say is like a massive oversimplification of these 5 main money personalities. But in my mind, they're like a speedometer or a odometer or gas gauge. It's a gauge of some sort. So on one end, in my mind, it's the savers. And then it goes investors and then shoppers and then big spenders and then debtors. I'm not saying one side of the gauge is worse than the other. It depends on your situation.
No, I like it.
But it's funny to kind of visualize it.
Yeah, like where do you fall on this?
It's a spectrum.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to quiz you boys.
Oh, my.
So determine which money personality are the following pop culture characters. So we've got a couple of pop culture characters on here, and I want y'all to identify which one of the 5 personalities they fit into. Okay, so Cher Horowitz from Clueless.
Big spender, no question about it.
100%. Big
Wah,
spender.
wah, wah. Shopper. Cher loves to shop.
What?
And
Darn
often
it,
uses
yeah.
retail therapy to make herself feel better, even if it means spending her father's money. But she's a shopper.
Okay.
Now give me a Cher quote. We need like a quote from all of these.
As if.
Nice.
I loved that movie so much. Okay, Tony Stark.
I'm gonna say big spender.
I'm going to say investor.
Okay.
He's smart. He's aware of everything. He's clearly he spends money, but he lives a lifestyle that he can afford because of all of his investments, right?
He's a big spender.
Let's go.
Darn it.
Known for a luxurious lifestyle, Tony is
Whatever.
always ready to spend big on the latest technology, cars, and anything else that catches his fancy. Mm-hmm. Okay, Ron Swanson, Parks and Rec.
Saver. He's a carpenter on his spare time.
Ron is a saver. He is known for his minimalist lifestyle and distrust of government spending, prefers to save his gold and other resources for when they are truly needed.
Guys, I just started watching this show over the weekend. This past weekend, we were in a hotel. I didn't have my normal Netflix and stuff, so I was just watching what was on the TV, and I found a channel that was showing Parks and Rec, and some people had said that I might like it, so I started watching it, and I am obsessed.
It's great.
Now.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed. So, good times.
Yep.
Okay.
You are Ron Swanson.
Okay, Carrie Bradshaw, Sex and the City.
Shopper.
I mean, it's got to be Shopper, right?
I would tend to disagree with this answer. The answer is big spender. Carrie is infamous for her love of fashion and her tendency to spend lavishly on designer shoes and clothes. I'd throw her still in the same category as Cher as shopper, but the quiz says big spender because Carrie spends a lot on her shoes and clothes, but
Clearly, the answers to this quiz are subjective.
They're subjective.
And we're not the ones that came up with these
They may be
answers,
onto
but-
something because when we went over Shopper, it says may be aware of their urge and concerned about the debt it creates. I don't think Carrie's concerned about the debt it creates.
no, not at all. Okay, Lorelai Gilmore, Gilmore Girls.
I don't know this show. I mean, I know of it, but I don't watch it.
I mean, I would say, given her upbringing, given her parentage, her knowledge of money, her business sense, I would say she's got to be an investor.
I will say saver just because.
Yeah.
So this one shocks me too because I've watched this show a lot. They're calling her a debtor. Lorelai has a love for splurging on coffee and takeout, often leading her into debt and financial stress despite her best efforts. I don't remember
know
on
that
this show ever talking about her being stressed out about money.
I mean, she
was worried about
clearly had,
Lorelai going to school.
Yeah,
Rory.
She couldn't afford certain things that she wanted to, but she was also very aware that she couldn't afford them, and she never went into debt except for the fact that she did things like let her parents pay for her daughter's school. And in exchange, she had to go to dinner with her parents once a week.
She was leveraging finances.
Yeah, I mean, that seems very...
Do you think Stars Hollow is an expensive place to live?
I mean, I hope that it's not because I want to retire there.
Yeah.
It seems very like New Hampshire, right? Vermont, somewhere
I mean,
northeast.
it's Connecticut. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
It's definitely in Connecticut.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely northeast, and it's definitely it's going to be more expensive than say
Collierville.
South Haven. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and the last one on our list, Bruce Wayne, Batman.
I've got to go big spender on this one.
I mean,
Because-
we haven't had a single investor in the group. Is somebody going to be an investor?
But I don't think he's seeking a day when past it. He doesn't care about all that. He's just like, I have all the money in the world. I'm just going to spend on everything.
He's the greatest detective in the world.
He is.
He just
And you're forgetting he's also a businessman. So he's an investor
okay.
because he's a savvy businessman, investor.
So is Tony Stark.
So
though.
he uses his wealth strategically to fund his ventures and the operations of Wayne Enterprises. I'd agree.
I mean, as a matter of
Tony
fact,
Stark and Batman are big spenders and investors.
Tony Stark and Bruce Wayne are frequently compared to each other because Bruce Wayne is DC and Tony Stark is Marvel, and they're
both just rich.
Yeah,
They're not
They have no
superhuman.
superpowers.
Yeah.
They're just both rich. Although Bruce Wayne is the greatest.
Did we say Tony was big spender?
Yeah.
Tony's big spender, yeah. Okay, well, so we don't necessarily agree, but hopefully this shows you an example of these are 5 personalities, and just as normal personalities, you're misdiagnosed. Like Court likes to say that he's a grumpy cat personality, but actually when you get to know him, he is not at all grumpy.
That is not true.
He is a very
He's a teddy
friendly
bear.
teddy bear. And so I think people are misdiagnosed sometimes on these personalities, whether it's real personalities, money personalities, things like that. And so that's where it's kind of subjective of which personality fits and what do you view as these people, because I wonder how Cher and Tony and Ron and Carrie and Lorelai and Bruce would identify themselves, because it might be very different than what we put for them or what this list put for them.
Well, clearly Lorelai would be attracted to Ron because
Oh, yeah.
he's like a little.
He's the everyman.
Yeah, he's like a little grumpy Luke, just like the man that she ended up with, Luke. So Luke's grumpy, Ron's
I don't know that
grumpy.
Ron Swanson and Luke Danes are on the same wavelength.
You mean you don't think one is as attractive as the other, do you?
Well, no.
Okay.
I like to think of this group as like the new Avengers. When you listed them out, think about
Cher, Tony, Ron, Carrie, Lorelai, and Bruce.
Can you imagine?
That would be a wild bunch.
Okay, so guys, you might have noticed at the beginning we didn't do a list. This was
This
effectively
list.
our list.
Yes.
This was the list for the day.
Yep. Okay, so impact of money personalities on financial decisions. Couples or business partners with different money personalities can navigate financial decisions together. So just as Court, you started off with, you've got the spender and the saver and they marry each other. Think about in a business opportunity, like having different opinions. One business owner wants to be the big spender and have the latest and greatest. The other one's like, no, like we need to invest. We need to put it back into the business. We don't need to spend. We don't need to do that. So that's going to cause some challenges.
Okay, so we've been reading a book recently called
Unseasoned hospital food. I'm just kidding. Unreasonable hospitality.
Unseasoned hospital food. And one of the things that he talks about is very early on in the book, he talks about, can't remember exactly the phrases he uses. I think he calls it restaurant intelligence versus corporate intelligence or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And basically the idea is on the restaurant smart side, you're doing things that are creative and that are letting people live their best life in chefery or whatever. And then on the corporate side, you're more focused on the numbers and making sure that you're actually profitable and that you're following, okay, yes, it's wonderful that you could cook this lobster in a way that everybody loved, but is the lobster costing you more than you're actually making? And so there are two different sides to the restaurant business. And I think you have kind of these different personalities in any venture where you could potentially be dealing with someone who is the idea guy versus someone who is the number cruncher. And,
And a lot of times you need the balance of the two.
yeah, absolutely.
Because if you had somebody who's just the ideas person and the big spender and the dreamer, then you're going to end up putting yourself into debt because you don't have somebody to balance you out a little bit.
Right.
So that's why I think a lot of times couples are attracted that way, whether it's romantic couples or business partners, because you've got to have that balance. How would each personality handle buying a car or planning a vacation? This goes into a lot of the financial behaviors and things like that, and where I have to work with couples because one person may be like, I'd rather pay cash for the car. I don't want debt. Other may be like, I've never buying a new car. I only want used cars. even when it comes down to paying for kids' education, some are like, my parents didn't pay for my education. Others like, well, my parents did. And it's so much, again, as you see, the reason why we created this podcast, there's so many different financial topics out there. At the core, it's about partnership and awareness and having somebody help you kind of navigate through it all. Most people exhibit traits from multiple money personalities depending on the situation or stage of life they're in. Yep. See, we talked about it. Like, you can hit every one of these different personalities. So this is a personality disorder when it comes to money. For example, someone might primarily identify as a saver, but have moments of being a spender when it comes to certain indulgings, or investors who occasionally act like shoppers during big sales.
Yeah. Generally speaking, I'm very averse to spending any money. I would rather just not spend. I would rather just hang on to all of the money, or, we do spend, obviously, our money on a monthly basis. We have expenses and little things that we spend our money on, but I very rarely make big purchases. I've been talking about getting a new vehicle for like the last 5 years. I've wanted a new vehicle, and I just never would do it. I never would pull the trigger because we've talked about possibly budgeting car expense as just one of your standard expenses. You're always going to have either that maintenance cost or that car payment cost, and you just keep it in your budget. I've never been a person that had that car expense in my budget. I've always just been someone who is like, once the car is paid off, we rock along as long as we can without paying any money to maintain the car. But then I just got to a point where I was like, no, I've got to have a car. And so I just bought the car. I was like, okay, I'm just going to get the car. And so, I kind of switched from sort of this frugal kind of mentality to this just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull the trigger. Here I go. Boom. But when I did it, I was like, okay, so we're going to have this much payment. We're going to put this much money away to cover the monthly payments. So like I went through all the stages of financial personality, basically. I was like everything from, oh my God, I'm in debt to, okay, I'm going to invest this money so I can make the payments. And, so it was like all at once. I was like seriously a multiple personality there for a few days.
Jekyll and Hyde on the car lot.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so tips for change. So spenders, if you're in your spender personality, shop a little less, save more.
Easy.
Savers, use moderation. Okay.
Okay.
That's just, balance, saving and spending.
Well, again, when we're talking about savers, a lot of times we have to talk savers into spending some of their money.
Absolutely. Like, I get people on board of like, hey, let's put money aside for a future account or a travel account. And then it's been, a couple years, I'm like, are you going to go on a trip? Are you going to spend some of this? And they're like, well, no, I'm addicted to saving. And it's like, okay, that's great.
Okay, wait a second. Has anybody ever actually said to you, I'm addicted to saving?
I do have some clients that are addicted to saving, and they get really upset. And, it kept one couple like for 4 years before jumping on finally buying a house that they really needed, because they were like, we just like seeing our account and how it's grown and what it's been saved. And it's just like, we just really like that and we don't want to pull it out.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think of that young couple from a couple of years ago. Weren't they putting a crazy amount into their 401k every month or something?
Yeah.
Are they still doing that, or did you talk them off the ledge?
I've talked them off the ledge and said the balance, because it's one of those, yes, you want to adequately save. And that's where I do that Monte Carlo analysis with the financial plans and give people their score. And some people are like, oh, well, it's not good enough. And I'm like, no, you get a certain score. You've got a great balance between what you're spending money on, but you're adequately protecting and saving for what could happen. So that's kind of in the saving category.
Okay, shoppers. So we have the establish a budget,
Womp womp.
Clearly, if you have a set amount that you can spend and you are emotionally charged by shopping and buying, I almost think this should be called buyers instead of shoppers. Because we're not talking about just going out and window shopping, which I think I love to window shop. It gives me sort of when I'm stressed, I can just walk through a store and look at things, but I don't buy. So we're talking about people that are actually buying. You've got to set those limits so that you're not buying over what you can actually afford to buy, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's right. If you're a debtor, evaluate your debt and credit limits and start saving. So evaluate your debt, what you've spent, and your credit limits, what you can spend. And start saving.
Yeah. So budget, right?
Budget. I know.
Awareness.
This is a fancy way of saying budget.
Be aware. And then investors, stay mindful of long-term goals and opportunities. I mean, investors, it's, be aware of your risk level too and your ongoing constant change of what are your other personalities. Because if you're an investor and you're kind of, being a little bit risky, but then you've turned yourself into a shopper or a spender or a debtor, then there may be some issues there and you may need to reevaluate your investments.
Bullseye this up.
Okay, so Bullseye, we've talked about 5 great different personalities. You may be sitting there trying to think of which one you are, but again, remember, it's not a permanent, you're branded as that. It can be at different moments.
Yep.
And so you could be a big spender and a shopper because you may want to buy the big luxury items, but also you enjoy buying the little trinkets and things like that as well. So managing your money involves self-awareness. I think we've talked about that a lot.
Yes.
Be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of what you're spending, what you actually have coming in, what your behavior is.
Yeah, if you are aware of what your behavior is, you can modify it to be the healthiest financial person that you can be. And I think that's the most important thing, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest part of this is just it's awareness, it's understanding these different personalities, it's understanding your behavioral finance and why you spend or why you save the way you do.
Setting and achieving your financial goals.
Boom.
Bullseye.
That's done.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Boom. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, there's the closing bell. You've made it to the end of yet another episode of the BullCast podcast. If you liked what you heard and you'd like to hear more, please feel free to go to your favorite subscription service and sign up to have our podcast beamed directly to your listening device every single Thursday at noon. If you'd like to find out more about Cortland, Katie, Cameron, or Nicole, please feel free to go to our website. That website is bullcastpodcast.com. We've got bios, we've got pictures, and we've also got a place where you can make a comment on one of our episodes or suggest a topic you'd like to hear us talk about. Did I mention we have pictures? We also have pictures on Instagram. That Instagram handle is @BullCastPodcast, and we also have an X handle @BullCastPodcast as well. We have a Facebook page. That Facebook page is BullCast the Podcast. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, as we have mentioned on so many episodes prior to this one, we all work at a place called Pickler Wealth Advisors. And if you would like to find out more about us, because we do have bios up there too, or find out about our amazing team, find out about what we could do, what we can do for you, or find out about our boss, David Pickler, please feel free to go to that website. That website is picklerwealthadvisors.com.
That's advisors with an O.
Not an E.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've given you everything you need to know to do a deep dive into your personality financially. So for now, I'm Court.
I'm Katie.
I'm Cam.
And we done.